Welcome back to the second part of Pablo Neruda's Keeping Quiet. Now, please turn to page 96, and there we should start. Those who prepare green wars, wars with gas, wars with fire, victory with no survivors. I'll take that as the first unit. Who prepare green wars? Who are the people who generally prepare green wars? Wars with gas, wars with fire. Who are those? Let's find some more clues. Victory with no survivors. Okay, they are people who win the war but do not survive. Now, to my understanding, this is a reference to people who do anything in order to cook their meals or cut down vegetation in order to eat, or those even make non-vegetarian food, because green is a symbol for our environment. So those who exploit the environment is the answer there. Those who prepare green wars, those who exploit the environment for food, for shelter, for clothing, for everything. Wars with gas. Now the word prepare is used, so the most appropriate way to look at it is cooking, because that is why we generally talk about preparing food. No, we don't say making food, we say prepare it. So probably that is the reason why he has used that image here. Those who prepare green wars, people who are cooking, people who use the knife, chop onions and all the vegetables fine, cut across meat and chop it finely, or crush some greenery in order to prepare food. Now, how do they prepare food? They break food down with gas. They use some kind of fuel. When you exploit the environment, suppose even if you are making something out of iron or steel, you need to break down the material that is required in order to make things. And how do you do that? We generally use fire. Fire is one of the most important reasons why we have an industrial revolution. We had an industrial revolution. We have everything from fire. No, we made everything. Our progress, our development, our growth is as a result of fire. That's where it all started, the discovery of fire. And very simply put, what he is talking about here is just the simple fire under the vessel which is on the stove in order to prepare food. Wars with gas, wars with fire. So gas is the fuel, fire is what is produced by the fuel. What is the result of these wars against nature? Nature dies, so do we. Victory, who won? We won. Over whom? Over nature. What is nature? Does it not include us? Yes, it does include us. So we are going to kill ourselves. Victory with no survivors. Now let's see the rest of the sentence by starting right from the beginning. Those who prepare green wars, wars with gas, wars with fire, victory with no survivors, would put on clean clothes. What would they do? They would put on clean clothes. When will they put on clean clothes? When they keep quiet. Put on clean clothes. To put on clean clothes is probably sanctify themselves, because sanctification is connected with cleanliness. Cleanliness is, I've always been thinking of things like that. I thought that even when we try to take a bath, we try to keep ourselves clean. with the idea of cleanliness and sanctification, holiness, they're all somehow or other connected. So, would put on clean clothes would become clean, Mr. Clean, holy, and walk about with their brothers. So they would forget all their enmity, they'll forget all their animosity, they'll forget all competition and move around. Since they've forgotten enmity of all kinds, they walk around with everybody else as brothers. Okay, they only think of themselves and the earth. They don't think of how they are performing and how their competitors performing. No, because there's no performance here. They have forgotten all about it. Would put on clean clothes and walk about with their brothers in the shade. The shade represents peace. It will be a time of peace. It is when you introspect, it will be a time of peace. You're going to look into yourself and see what you're doing to the other, and therefore you're not competing with him. In fact, you're looking critically at the whole scene. Walk about with their brothers in the shade, doing nothing. What will they be doing now? He's not trying to say doing absolutely nothing. He's trying to say not working for their day-to-day sustenance. They're not doing that. And in order to clarify that part, that point, he starts with what I want should not be confused with total inactivity. Now, when I tell doing nothing, I don't mean total inactivity. Don't confuse it with total inactivity. It is not total inactivity. Life is what it is about. What am I saying when I say doing nothing? I am saying life. Life is what it is about. I'm talking about living. I'm talking about our survival. The survival of us and the environment. And he wants to talk about it in a very forceful way. And he says, I want no truck with death. Meaning, it is not at all connected with death. When I talk about doing nothing, it doesn't mean stop all work, which includes also moving your muscles. And one of the muscles of our body is probably the heart, maybe stopping the heart. And then the intercostal muscles, the diaphragm, stopping that also, doing nothing, because not even breathing. That would end in death, right? He's saying not that kind of total not doing anything. Okay, breathe. Okay, let your heart beat. Walk around. When he said talk, do nothing, and you talk about walk, you're contradicting yourself, right? So he's trying to say, I'm not contradicting myself. I didn't mean that level of doing nothing. I want no truck with death. That would lead to death, and I'm not at all connected with death. I'm connected with living, and living it is very strongly, very forcefully. I want you to understand that. If we were not so single minded about keeping our lives moving, I'll refer to the way the South Korean schools run. They run in a very shockingly non-stop way. Now, the same thing does happen in India also, in the cities, where people are working, especially in the class 12, they are working throughout the week, throughout their holidays. There is no holidays, there is no rest, there is no early morning, there is no evening, there's no rest there. You barely get any sleep. You working, and doing nothing but working in order to get those big college admissions. So it says when we do that, we are very, very single minded about what we want, and that is progress, that is a seat in a college, that is a higher position in our workplace, that is a better job, that is success in life, that is a lot of money, and we are doing anything and everything to get that. What are we doing? We are single minded. If we were not so single minded and for once could do nothing, and for once, at least a small brief second, could do nothing. That second, it is not talking about 1 second, it's talking about a short time, maybe a day in a year when you reflect upon things like this. It's talking about the shortest possible time that you can spend on this kind of introspection. If we were not, maybe if you do that, maybe once in a while, if you can sit quietly and think about all these things and try to reclaim your life, if we were not so single minded about keeping our lives moving, about surviving, about trying to improve, and for once could do nothing, and for one small brief period of time could do nothing, perhaps, maybe a huge silence. Now he's talking about something very big, and he's talking about silence being very big. Now, if you're silent here, maybe this room would be silent or this class would be silent, but you could hear noises outside. If they were also, during examination days, the whole school becomes very quiet, and then you can hear, you can feel that there's a big silence, right? Now he's talking about something like that. He's saying, if all of us in this world could at one time together remain silent for introspection, maybe that is the kind of huge silence he's talking about. If we were not so single minded about keeping our lives moving and for once could do nothing, perhaps a huge silence might interrupt this sadness of never understanding ourselves. Maybe a kind of silence like that, when everybody is silent, we would be able to understand, we would be able to stop, at least for a brief minute, interrupt this sadness. Which sadness? The sadness of never understanding ourselves. The sadness that is a state of affairs now where we don't understand what we are doing and we're just doing it blindly. Which is that something that we are doing blindly? Work, 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 work. Not thinking, what will this kind of work lead to? It will lead to the extinction of the earth. It will lead first to the extinction of everything in this planet. The world becomes uninhabitable, then that leads to our death. And that is what he tells in the next line. And of threatening ourselves with death. So he has delivered his message. After delivering his message, he says, let me give you an example. Perhaps the earth can teach us. Maybe if you look at the earth, now this is why I talked about the Catholic meditation. Okay, and where they do believe that during those days, that's why I refer to the particular period of time, and I refer to the place where the poet lived and all his life, and the time during which this poem was written, because that was the time when the Catholic saints they began to propose a particular kind of meditation, which involves looking at nature all around, seeing all the damage that we have caused, and looking at hearing all the sounds, and then looking into at ourselves, and then also meditating. This is what they understood by meditation, and introspection is nothing but a form of meditation. Perhaps the earth too can be used as an example of something that becomes silent in order to refresh itself, rejuvenate itself. Perhaps the earth can teach us, as when everything seems dead and later proves to be alive. Because in the earth, this is what does happen. Day is not interminable. There is an end to day, night comes. So the earth too does take a rest. Same thing does happen in the case of hibernation. The animals during unfavorable conditions go into a state of hibernation, and then when the situation turns out to be favorable, they start moving around, and it looks like they become better adapted to their world. Perhaps the earth can teach us, as when everything seems dead, probably in the dead of winter, in a very very inhospitably cold winter terrain, as when everything seems dead and later proves to be alive. Later on, when spring comes, when everything becomes fresh and new, becomes alive. Everything seems to be new and fresh. Leaves seems to be new and absolutely spotless in excellence. After giving that example, he says, "Now I'll count up to 12." He says, "I'm waiting. I'm waiting for you to understand. I'm waiting for you to take your part. And you keep quiet, and I will go." And he says, "When you understand what is to be done, you'll keep quiet. And I will go." He says, "I will move on, and maybe I will encourage a go to another part of the world and encourage them also to keep quiet. And then there will be a stage when the silence is huge enough to make a difference." Thank you.